and there were plenty of finals on over the course of the weekend. In rugby, Alan Quinlan was watching them all. Alan, how are you getting on?
Good on yourself.
Yeah, very well. Let's just focus on the Super Rugby final and the URC final. Two very, very different games of rugby, I think it's fair to say, on Saturday, but the outpouring of emotion was similar at the end of both. And if we were worried at the start of the year about people caring about the URC or not caring enough about it, I think that question has been answered pretty phenomenally over the last two weekends.
Yeah, it has. I think, obviously, I'm not sure it was the best game to watch. The Stormers against the Bulls, they're both trying to cancel each other out. The Bulls were so dominant, I think, early on, but couldn't score in that first half. And complete turnaround. The Stormers in the second half were brilliant. And I was just trying to think, is this good for the league? The two South African teams at the final, and it's.
But the scenes, the fans, the crowd, even though it wasn't a full stadium, the colour that those fans bring to the competition, that element of it is unquestionably good, isn't it?
Yes, absolutely. I'm just asking the question: what would people be thinking? Because I think having South African teams in the URC the first year and two in the final, and the Stormers winning it, of course it is. It's brilliant to see. I think they'll only get better. I think look at the way they started the league. South Africans, they were coming straight from the Curry Cup, missing all their internationals. I think the challenge for everyone else is to, step up. I think it makes the league way more competitive. Going to South Africa is going to get even more difficult. I think they'll build on the back of this, the South African teams, and
Alan appears to have frozen mid-sentence there.
What was he going to say next? Send in your text now.
Yeah, I was just going to ask him what the concerns were around the URC. So you had Blues against Crusaders in the Super Rugby final as well. A few of the All Blacks on show ahead of the Ireland tour. The Ireland team has flown out to New Zealand at this point. So
are you on flight radar tracking?
Yeah, just making sure they get out of here safely. It'll probably be next week before they touch down there. So they're playing obviously the Maori All Blacks in a couple of games, 5-game series, so we'll have more on that as we build up to it next week. Alan, you are back with us. You broke up mid-sentence. I was going to ask you there about some of the concerns you had about the URC, because you said there a moment ago you were just unsure about what you saw in the final at the weekend. So what's concerning you most about the future of this competition?
I just think it's I have said this many times, the Welsh team's not being competitive in it. And I'm not having a go off Welsh rugby, but I think that's a concern that, the Ospreys, Scarlets and Cardiff weren't, in the mix for the playoffs. I think it shows how strong the South Africans can be with three of them in the playoffs. And I just think obviously winning it, I think, we've complained for years that the league wasn't competitive enough, particularly in the latter stages. And I think a lot of the English journalists give out about probably the game management of Irish players and the amount of games they play when it comes to game management and stuff like that. I still think that's going to be the same going forward, particularly through the IRFU player management, player welfare process, that the way the Irish players are managed, that's not going to really change. But I think, having Welsh teams being more competitive. But look, you have to tip your hat to the South African teams, and I think it's brilliant. It's up to the rest of the teams to try and be more competitive, deal with a different sort of game plan, physicality, travelling to South Africa, all that kind of stuff. But the Stormers were they lost the least amount of games in the league, so you can't really argue that they didn't deserve to be there. And obviously what the Bulls did to Leinster the week before proved that they're going to be a handful going forward. And I think the positive here for South African rugby is there's lots of young players have emerged in recent weeks, and some of them been picked in the Springbok squad. Evan Roos, Player of the Year in the URC, I think he was phenomenal. I watched him right at the start of the season, and I actually said to Ron O'Gara, you should try and sign this guy for La Rochelle, because he's a fantastic player, and they have a lot of good young players coming through. But I think the occasion and the scenes that we saw at the weekend were brilliant. I know some Irish people are saying we're not going to tune in and we're not going to watch, and maybe didn't capture the attention here, but I thought it was a brilliant occasion. I think both sides probably kicked the ball way too much. The Stormers kicked the ball 46 times from hand and the Bulls 41 times. So that was probably the frustrating part. Just the amount of times that they kicked, and it seemed to be contestable kicks continuously, kicking the ball away. And but Stormers were brilliant, and their attack game in the second half was much better than the Bulls. I know Jake White was upset and disappointed with his side's game management, but it was a great occasion and brilliant for South African rugby.
On Saturday morning then, Blues against Crusaders was on in the Super Rugby final. Crusaders won another title. The conditions weren't great, so we didn't see a fully slick version of Scott Robertson performing his dance at the full-time whistle, but some amazing offloads, some brilliant rugby played throughout the game. Just in particular, Quinny, I'm interested in the All Blacks that impressed you. Who should we be looking out for from a Blues and especially from a Crusaders perspective, given what you saw on Saturday morning?
I think Richie Mo'unga was outstanding again for the Crusaders. Just his overall attack game, and just the thought of probably Bowden Barrett and Richie Mo'unga being in a side that'll play Ireland on Saturday week is incredible. I think that again it was a game that was. It would cause you send ripples down your spine the way the Crusaders played in that first half. They were brilliant. The pace, the accuracy, the passing, the intensity that they brought, and that's something that Ireland are going to have to. I'm sure they'll be very, very aware of that. What's coming? I think there'll be an angry reaction from New Zealand when they play Ireland in that first test, but. I thought Richie Mo'unga was incredible, and that's the challenge for Ian Foster. Does he play the two of them, or does he leave one out? Does he play Barrett at full back and Mo'unga at 10? Sam Whitelock looks like he may be out for the Irish tour. He played with a broken thumb. But Rico Ioane, again, for the Blues was brilliant at the weekend. Akira Ioane, I should say, the back row. They've so many options. I think there's going to be a lot of young players and some new guys come on the scene for the All Blacks, but it's kind of getting closer and closer. And just watching what the Crusaders did at the weekend, I think that caused a little bit of concern for what may happen in a couple of weeks, the challenge that's facing Ireland.
One other game I wanted to ask you about at the weekend, and I didn't expect to be talking about this, was the Barbarians game. They beat England 52-21. Will Skelton was sent off and they led by only 3 points. There was a backheel conversion scored. It was Barbarians being Barbarians. We don't tend to read into this, but there's a headline here from the Telegraph. England boss Jones calls for calm after Barbarian humiliation. People... Maybe it's just Twitter people or like maybe just England fans who are getting carried away with this, but it does feel that this is a talking point, England getting beaten by the Barbarians. Does that speak to a wider malaise around the tenure of Eddie Jones at the moment, or is this a non-event, a non-story in your view?
Yeah, it wasn't a good result for them. Obviously, they had the Premiership finals on Leicester and Saracens, so the vast amount of his starters were playing in that final. They go to Australia for 3 tests, but there was still a lot of seasoned internationals played in that English side. I was just looking through the side who starts for England and Australia. Well, Tom Curry and Sam Underhill in the back row. Johnny May was on the wing. Charlie Ewells was playing. But I think to lose by that much against the Barbarians at home, because I played in the Barbarians before, I know how, like, you're literally thrown together. There's no pressure. The week is a bit of a celebration. The training isn't too hard. And for Fabien Galtier to put the Barbarian side together, I know the vast majority of those players were French players, and I'm sure he'll take some of them on their tour to Japan as well. But that would be really concerning for me. That look, it won't mean anything if Eddie Jones can get his side together and go to Australia and win the series there. But it's more kind of negative press that he's going to get and more pressure. given the last 2 Six Nations where they finished and the results that England have had. So not hugely significant, but still, I think if this was Ireland and they were in that situation, the press here would probably be really concerned and writing about that, and there'd be a lot more pressure on the Irish coaches. So he's deflecting a little bit and probably will get a pass here. But
I guess Quinny, he has the last cycle, World Cup cycle as well, where it felt as though England were in crisis and there were questions about his time in charge, probably at a similar moment away from the World Cup, and he still managed to get his team to perform, is what he can fall back on.
Yeah, probably. I think, and that's what saved him during in the Six Nations. There was a lot of pressure coming on, given some of the results, but they're not that. I think they're showing a lot of vulnerability. I think he's made a lot of changes and been chopping and changing his side for the last couple of seasons, Nathan. So I think he's will he go for the tried and tested in Australia, guys on reputation or form? I'm not sure, but I think if they were to go to Australia and lose a series, it just ramps up the pressure again. Will they make a decision and say, well, he won't go to the World Cup next year? I think it's probably too late in the day. I think he will go to the World Cup. And, if you put down an English side on paper and with everyone available, I think there'll still be a handful for anyone and be challengers for the World Cup. But there is a lot of pressure, and that negativity kind of stays with you until you start getting some really big results. So I think for their own confidence and self-belief, and for Eddie Jones to kind of dispel some of that negativity, he needs to do well in Australia with his team this summer.
Just one last thing we wanted to touch on, Alan, before we wrapped up this morning, is because we're in the off-season now, what Munster are going to do with these next few months. We've seen Leinster make a couple of acquisitions over the last little while, and they've built, it seems, ahead of next season. What do you expect Munster to do in this off-season, if anything?
I'm not sure they're going to be able to sign. They've signed, at the moment, Malachi Fekitoa, Anton Frisch, and Chris Moore, a young hooker from Exeter. He played for the Ireland club side a number of years ago. He's an exciting prospect. We don't know much about him. I think the issues obviously they have is, and I don't want to be disrespectful to who's already in those positions in the front row area. There's not enough depth there. There's not enough strength in depth. And if you want to win trophies, and particularly in Europe as well, you need to try and find quality there. So there's a lot of talk of Ollie Yeager played for the Crusaders at the tight head in the weekend, and there's continuous talk that maybe the Irish provinces will be looking to try and get him back. I don't think he's signed a new contract yet with the Crusaders. I think he was hoping to be in the All Black squad for the summer tour. He's someone that Munster, I'm sure, would be aware of. Maybe they've spoken to him. I don't know. That's only speculation, but the other side of that, what they need to do is get Kenyon Knox and Roman Salanoa up to speed and hope that they make some more progress, dynamic progress to strengthen the front row areas, because they're two young players who we need to see more of. Scott Buckley is a very promising hooker. I think he needs to come through now and get more games as well, and really challenge the other hookers there. If you were trying to sign, I think it's the obvious area that they're under pressure in, and that they need more depth in, but props are hard to come by for everyone. I think if you get RG Snyman back, that'll be an incredible boost for him if he can stay fit, and they get a run of games from him throughout the season. They'll be pretty okay. Who knows what Malachi Fekitoa will he bring the consistency that's required? He's a very, very talented player. Damien Dialende, his presence alone in that midfield was really important for Munster. But I think the coaching, that's what everybody's talking about. The attack game, can they develop their game more and play with pace and tempo that we've seen Leinster kind of set a standard for the last couple of seasons. So really, really important pre-season for them, and maybe they'll sign one or two players. I don't know yet.
Alan, good stuff this morning. Thanks, Millie, for being with us.
Cheers. Thanks, lads.
Alan Quinlan there on the line. We'll have plenty more from Alan over the next little while as he makes the trip down to New Zealand. The first test, Saturday week at this point against the All Blacks.